Okay, so why do we need a global language? Of what is the necessity actually of using a global language? Because you see in the subheading of this slide that translation can make international communication easy. So we have a chance that we can use an interpreter for international communication, and we can make our communication without learning the language. So why we will take pain of learning a new language? Let's see and analyze this hypothesis. Translation has played a central, though often unrecognized, role in human interaction for thousands of years. So translation had played a great role for international communication. So in initial stage, that means for 1,000 years, translation played a vital role for international communication. And when monarchs or ambassadors met on the international stage, they would invariably be interpreters present. So a king, a queen, an ambassador will be visiting some other parts of this world, and they will be accompanied by interpreters. The interpreter will be interpreting the language of the communicate of the other country for which the ambassador or king has moved on, and the communication will be easy. But there are limits to what can be done in this way. The more a community is linguistically mixed, the less it can rely on individual to ensure communication between different groups. So suppose a Bangladeshi person has visited France. So it would be easy that a French interpreter can do that job. But when a person of Bangladesh will be visiting a mixed linguistically varied countries, so what would be the scenario? So they have to maintain interpreter of many languages. So in communities where only 2 or 3 languages are in contact, bilingualism or trilingualism is a possible solution. And for most young children can acquire more than one language with unself-conscious age. So it is easy to know 2 or 3 languages. Okay, so in case of bilingual scenario or trilingual scenario, interpreter can do the job. And it is easy to get a person who knows more than 2 languages. Okay, so it is easy. But in communities where there are many languages in contact, as in much of Africa, Southeast Asia, such a natural solution doesn't readily apply. So in case of a mixed linguistic country, so where you will see the existence of more than 3 or 4 or 5 languages, so translation cannot play the role of global communication, or interpreter simply cannot do the role. The problem has traditionally been solved by finding a language to act as a lingua franca. So in case of an international body where more than 5 or 6 languages are used, in that scenario, a language, a global communication for global communication is needed, and that is called a common lingua franca. Sometimes when communities begin to trade with each other, they communicate by adopting a simplified language known as pidgin, which combines elements of their different languages. So in case of 2 countries, when they will be making a business deal or trade communication, so these activities can be done by the pidgin language. Pidgin, that means the fragmented form of language that is called the pidgin. That means to serve the purpose, not a full sentence. Some word should be necessary in case of communication. So this scenario, country to country, when such trade scenario will be happening in two countries, then pidgin can solve the problem. But in other cases, of course, a common language is necessary. Many such pidgin languages survive today in territories which formerly belonged to the European colonial nations and act as a lingua francas. For example, West African pidgin. English is used extensively between several ethnic groups along the West African coast. So in African cases, we see existence of such kind of pidgin language, that is West African pidgin. But again and again, I am repeating that this pidgin language or this interpreter can possible for communication in case of two countries or three countries. But except this, it is possible to make communication with the pidgin language or interpreter. Sometimes an indigenous language emerges as a lingua franca. Usually the language of the most powerful ethnic group in the area is as in the case of Mandarin Chinese. Okay, so in case of Bangladesh, we have many regional languages. That is Sylheti language, Chittagong language, Noakhali language, Rajshahi language. Okay, but one language may be a vehicle of such communication. In the same way, in China, we see several variations of Chinese language, but the most prominent variation, that is the Mandarin Chinese. So Mandarin is a form of Chinese language, just like Sylheti language is a form of Bangla language. Mandarin language is a form of Chinese language. So in China, Mandarin variant is very common. So Mandarin in such cases play a vital role to make the communication. The other groups then learn this language with varying success, and thus become to some degree bilingual. But most often a language is accepted from outside the community, such as English or French, because of the political, economic, and the religious influence of the foreign power. But again, that we talked in our previous part of this class, that is, for the cause of the political power and the economic power and the religious power, a language is accepted by other countries. The geographical extent to which a lingua franca can be used is entirely governed by political factors. Many lingua francas extend over quite small domains between a few ethnic groups in a part of a single country, or linking the trading population of just a few countries in the West African case. So, and in contrast, Latin was a lingua franca throughout the whole of the Roman Empire, at least at the level of government. Very few ordinary people in the subjugated domains would have spoken Latin. And in modern times, Swahili, a name of a language, Arabic, Spanish, French, English, Hindi, Portuguese, and the several other languages have developed a major international role as a lingua franca in limited areas of this world. So in case of global communication, think that we do not have a global language. What would be our alternatives? One alternative, interpreter. Another alternative, pidgin language. So in this scenario, we have got that interpreter might play the role in case of 3 languages or 2 languages, but more than 3 languages cannot be interpreted by the interpreter, because a person cannot know more than 2 or 3 languages easily. And in case of the pidgin language, as we see that the variant language, that is Mandarin or some other pidgin language might use. But again, the problem will arise in case of international communication. And the problem becomes more severe when in the 20th century, the chief international forum of the political communication, the United Nations, dates only from 1945. So previously, we are discussing 5 languages or 6 languages. But when United Nations was established, that was in 1945. At the same time, UNESCO, UNICEF, and World Bank, the World Health Organization, and the International Atomic Energy Agency. This international body established in 1945 to 1957. Within the 10 years, this international organization established. So what is the scenario? Before this scenario, before United Nations was formed, such international body uh, was not existed. That means around 190 in the case of some united bodies been represented in a single meeting places. So interpreter or the pidgin can solve the problem in 5 languages. But in an international United Nations meeting, there will be 190 countries. So existence of 190 languages. So is it possible for making the meeting fruitful with the interpreter? That means the interpreter have to interpret 190 languages. It is totally impossible. It is, and so a language is necessary. And at a more restricted level, multinational, regional, or political groupings have come into being, such as the Commonwealth and the European Union. To pressure to adopt a single lingua franca to facilitate communication in such context is considerable. The alternative being expensive and impracticable multi-way translation facilities. So in such international bodies, communication is impossible or impracticable without the help of a common language, a global language. And for this reason, United Nations established 5 official languages, which are the English, French, Spanish, Russian, and Chinese. So what do the international proceeding, what does the international proceeding do in case of United Nations meetings? So if a lecture is given to United Nations meeting, that lecture is translated in these 5 languages. Which are the languages? English, French, Spanish, Russian, and Chinese. They are the official languages of United Nations. There is now a widespread view that it makes sense to try to reduce the number of languages involved to the world bodies, if only to cut down on the vast amount of interpretation or translation or the clerical work required. So United Nations is formed to establish the global peace and harmony and the global and to solve UNESCO, UNICEF, this country or this organization have been established for the cause of solving the international problem. But in case of the language, most of the clerical job or the clerks are busy in interpreting the issue or interpreting the meeting agenda, something else. So they become busy doing something else like interpretation and the translation. So it is very impractical. And half of the budget of an international organization can easily get swallowed up in translation cost. So if the translation cost of an international body is deducted, half of the budget will be saved. And for this reason, a global language is necessary. By trimming a translation budget is never easy, as obviously no country likes the thought of its language being given a reduced international standing. So the 5 languages was used in international United Nations, but any country will not admit that here her language will be deducted from the international community. So, but if a language is deducted out of these 5 languages, English, French, Spanish, Russian, or Chinese, if one language is deducted, that means the translation activities on that language will be stopped. So the budget of that international organization will be reduced, but they will not try to compromise this scenario that their language will be deducted from the international communication or the United Nations official status. Language choice is always one of the most sensitive issues facing a planning committee. The common situation is one where a committee doesn't have to be involved, where all the participants at an international meeting automatically use a single language in a utilitarian measure, a working language, because it is one with they have all come to learn the separate region. So any country will not allow to deduct the official status of United Nations, their language. But in this regard, they have framed a strategy. So five official languages are there: English, French, Spanish, Russian, and Chinese. Any country will not allow that their language will be deducted from the official status of United Nations. But so they have come a decision that they have taken a decision that they will be dealing with one language, and that language is working language. They have given this title. And they all have come to learn the separate region. This situation seemed to be slowly becoming a reality in the meeting around the world as general competence in English grows. So when everyone agreed that they will be working with a language, and that is English. So gradually, English gets the dominant position in international bodies and international communities. The need for the global language is particularly appreciated by the international academics and business communities. So this is the scenario of international body: United Nations, UNESCO, UNICEF, World Bank, IA. But in case of academics and the business scenario, we see that the English language has been mandatory. Here, that the adoption of a single lingua franca is most in evident, both in lecture room and boardrooms, as well as in thousands of individual contacts being made daily all over the globe. So in lecture rooms and in boardrooms, that means board meeting rooms, and even when the people will be communicating with other countries' people, the language is English. So from the international body to international business and international academics, especially for giving lectures and especially for holding meetings, gradually English was gaining the upper position in such scenario. A conversation over the internet between academic physicists in Sweden, Italy, and India is at present practicable only if a common language is available. So academic discussion between the physicists or the doctors, we say, between three countries: Sweden, Italy, and India. So Swedish language, Italian language, and Indian language. 3 languages cannot be used. Okay, so if they come in a compromise decision, that is, they will be dealing with not Swedish language, not Italian, not Hindi, they will be dealing with a working language, that is the English language. So Sweden, the people, the doctor, Swedish doctor might not understand Italy or Indian Hindi, but he or she might understand English as well. And this is the scenario that will be happening for the Italian doctor and also the Indian doctor. So these 3 people, they are from 3 different language background, but they know a common language. And what is the language? That is the English. And in such a way, English language gets dominant in international communication. A situation where a Japanese company director arranges to meet German and Saudi Arabian contact in a Singapore hotel to plan a multinational deal wouldn't be impossible. If each plunged into a three-way translation support system. Okay, so again, in this scenario that we have discussed earlier, so again, this scenario is impractical because all of them should carry three interpreters. But it would be far more complicated than the alternative, and which is far easy to make use of the same language. So as this example suggests, the growth of international contact has been largely the result of two separate developments. The physicists would not be talking to so conveniently to each other at all without the technology of modern communications. And the business contact would be unable to meet so easily in Singapore without the technology or the air transportation. Okay, so this scenario, in Singapore scenario or in physicist scenario, we see that of course a language or working language or a global language or an international language might give the convenient position to have the meeting or business tour or anything else. And in both cases, a global language is on growth. And at present, another scenario we notice, that is, in case of the people has been more mobile, physically and electronically. Mobile, that means many people at present nowadays are ready to visit foreign countries for many reasons. Annual airlines statistics show that steadily increasing numbers are finding the motivation as well as the means of transport themselves physically around the globe, and sales of faxes, modems, and the personal computers show an ever greater increase in the prepared to send their ideas in words or emails electronically. So another thing that is in case. So we started with the translation, then interpreter, then international body, then also the business deal. And now we have seen that nowadays people are more mobile. They are in an intention that they will be communicating physically with other people or electronically, that means by email or something else. So that everything can be done very quickly with the help of technologies. And it is now possible using electric mail to copy to message to thousands locations all over the world virtually simultaneously. So in case of the email, you can type the simple email address and you can send it to multiple location, 100 location, 100 person, okay, within a single click if you do it in English language. So this is easily, that can be done easily with the help of the global language. So this is why people so often talk these days of the global village. So in case of having the urgency to meet physically or to talk electronically towards the world people, it has become mandatory. It has become a mandatory scenario of the people because we live in a global place. We can keep ourselves aloof from global communication, and for this reason, a global language is necessary. And what has been so impressive about the development which have been taken place since 1950 decades, that is why, to a greater or lesser extent, every country in the world, that so many countries have come to be involved. So again, for the cause of the international body, so many countries has come forward for in a single goal to do something. And there is no nation now which doesn't have some level of accessibility using telephone, radio, television, air transport, or through facilities such as fax, electronic mail, or internet are much less widely available. So our country, our people are now are not aloof from any kind of communication with other people. So that means a person nowadays, for his own sake, he or she has to communicate with other people living in other countries, either electronically or physically. And again, the scale or the recency of the developments has been appreciated. In 1945, the United Nations began life with 51 members, but in 1956, it had risen to 80. Even the independence movement was growing, and even in 1990 decades, there are 190 countries were involved in United Nations. And the trend may not be over given the growth of so many regional nationalistic movements worldwide. That means the country will get freedom and they will be the member of United Nations. So day by day, the language is improving all over the world. So there is no precedent in human history for what happens to language. So we can give the prescription that what will be happening, the future of a language, especially what would be the history or linguistic history of English language in such a circumstances of rapid change. So that we have noticed in this class that the international organization, technological advancement, academic advancement for this region, we can give the guarantee that the English language, what would be the future of a language. And there has never been a time when so many nations were needing to talk to each other so much. So we are living in the 21st century. So before that, the world was slow, but at present, we are passing a time that every people are busy. So many nations were needing to talk to each other so much. There has never been a time when so many people wish to travel so many places. There has never been such a strain placed on the conventional resources of translating or interpreting. Never has the need for more widespread bilingualism has greater to ease the burden placed on the professional few, and never has been a more urgent need for a global language. So we are living in a scenario, in that scenario, that we are living in a global village for international body, UN, UNESCO, United Nations, IA. Apart from that, for the cause of trade, business, and academic purpose, people are very much intended to communicate globally. And for this reason, a language is needed, and that language is a common language for global communication. It may be any other language, but at present, English language gets upper hand in case of global language. And most probably you have understood the necessity of using global language. So thank you all.